the problem that President Trump now has is that he is in a spiral of escalation that he doesn't control. Much of what has been dictated over the last 2 weeks has been dictated by the Iranians, not necessarily vis-a-vis Israel and the US, but certainly indirectly via the Gulf states and the global economy onto the United States. And what you don't want to do in this sort of spiral is escalate further. So a landing on Krieg Island would fundamentally undermine the center of gravity economically of the IRGC and of the Iranian regime. It wouldn't completely destroy it. I mean, Iran has a lot of other ways to get their oil out, but it would be a major escalation to which the Iranian will respond in kind towards the Gulf state and potentially even towards the Strait of Hormuz. If the Strait of Hormuz is the most vulnerable point of the president of the world economy, of the Gulf states, then this is where the Iranians will exercise more and more pressure. Using the 2,500 Marines for some landing operation on the islands north of the Emirates, some of them are Emirati islands that were seized illegally by Iran in 1979, will not do much. It will certainly not help securing this very narrow corridor. Because if you actually look at the corridor and where it is situated, the islands which are on the western side of the Strait of Hormuz will not necessarily do much. If you were trying to seize the northern islands of this corridor, it also won't do much. Much of the firing of missiles, drones, is coming from the hinterland. So you'd actually have to seize the northern shore, which is rugged terrain, very difficult to seize and hold. Looks a lot like Yemen, by the way. And a lot of the tactics that Iran will likely employ would be that the Houthis have employed against shipping in the Bab al-Mandeb Strait. Again, we were extremely unsuccessful. The US was unsuccessful, so far so that the US had to go approach Oman to broker a ceasefire. So I don't think 2,500 Marines will make any difference whatsoever to opening up the Strait. I think this is a scenario which is completely different from what we see today. First, obviously, in the 1980s, the US wasn't a direct party to the conflict. Iran was still in a post-revolutionary process of consolidating power. The IRGC was nowhere as organized as it is today. We obviously have completely different technology. At the time, in the 1980s, the biggest problem would have been mining and mines in the Strait of Hormuz. That didn't happen. But what we see today is Iran is unlikely going to use mines. There's been obviously conflicting reporting about this. But what they're trying to do is use a range of different smaller either skiffs that can attack, similar to piracy around the Horn of Africa, attacking ships, or using drones and underwater vehicles that are functioning like mines, but do so being remotely controlled and thereby being a lot more agile and thereby providing a kind of more, what's the right word here, probably a more discriminatory approach to targeting vessels, which means mines will hit everyone. Mines means you actually close the straits. If you use these sort of drones, you allow some vessels to pass and others not. And so the situation that we see now is entirely different. I also disagree with Eli here in terms of thinking that any sort of Navy would actually trust this sort of scenario and go through the straits, because it would expose very, very expensive kit, not just of the US military, of any military, to this kind of unconventional threat. Because the Iranians can launch all kinds of, obviously they have some element of control of the air because they can fire missiles, they can fire drones, but they also control the maritime as well as the surface maritime domain, where they can use all kinds of small skiffs to cause massive damage to very, very expensive platforms. So, you know, having a Navy ship there is not going to act as a deterrent. I also don't think that the US can actually deter the Iranians from attacking, because the Iranians have gone quite nuclear when it comes to going against American sort of assets and American interests. So I don't think they would hold back and would be deterred in any way. The fact is, most of the US Navy is far away at the moment from the Strait of Hormuz, and I don't see why they would go anywhere close, because everyone in the US Navy would tell them that's almost suicidal. So the issue with the Strait of Hormuz is really not a military one primarily. It's one to do with markets, insurance and shipping primarily. And so the key problem here is that markets have no confidence that currently they can underwrite shipping or ships and vessels to go through the strait. And all Iran has to do to undermine that confidence is throwing in some missiles or some drones from time to time in order to undermine that confidence. And they can keep on doing this indefinitely. So militarily speaking, this is not something a navy can actually solve. It's a market issue. And that confidence cannot be restored by the military. That confidence can be restored through diplomacy only. And I think what we're seeing now is that other countries are coming forward, especially in Europe, are saying, okay, if we want to go through that strait, through that choke point, we will have to develop some sort of channel, back channel with Iran, potentially via Oman, to negotiate a passage, free passage through that bottleneck. We've seen Turkey doing it. We've seen Pakistan, India trying to do this. We've seen France and also Italy trying to reach out. I think what we're seeing is a gradual opening up of the Straits for particular countries who have agreements in place with the Iranians. And my forecast would be that the US is probably, with this president focusing on military only, would probably be one of the last countries to get a free passage, considering that they're unwilling at the moment to engage constructively and diplomatically the Iranians to basically get a passage through the Strait.